Hey guys, welcome to the Word with Friends podcast. We are going to be talking about Ruth tonight.
Yeah.
And we just heard a wonderful teaching, and we're just going to throw some of our perspective on it, cover this topic. But before we get into that, let's just talk real quick about your week. How's what's new in the world of John and Beth?
Well,
nothing.
Fun things happening here.
And that's our show for tonight, guys.
It's been fun.
No, since John and I are empty nesters once again, I feel like we've had a bigger opportunity to speak the word to each other. We've been talking about it a lot more than when distraction was here. So that's been great. And I feel like it's, just a focal point again.
Yeah, for sure.
Really blessed about that. It's been a really great week, profitable week, and we're getting stuff done, and God is moving for us. So very excited.
I've had some challenges at work that have come up this last week. Some things that were not favorable things to see, but I just kept focused and kept believing for it to be good, and that it was aside of those pitfalls and things trying to make me stumble. I just kept putting on my faith that God had it, and the week came out great. Everybody did their jobs, and it was awesome.
Cool. What about you guys?
I bought a car.
Oh, what'd you get?
I found it.
What'd you get?
His name's also on the title. We got a 2017 Dodge Charger.
Nice.
Yeah.
You got the Dodge bug.
Yeah, it's tricked out too. It's had some aftermarket stuff done by the previous owner. So
yeah, it's very well
settling in that.
Probably, yeah.
Yes, probably because it's bigger actually, and
it's got more room in it and everything than our other cars.
Than the Camry, yeah.
Those cars are so cool.
It's really going to be kind of we have a driveway that's got that's about the size of a shoebox, so you can fit our two cars on it, and that's about it. So this whatever car's in the garage is and it's available at 2:00 in the morning when she goes to work is whatever one's going to be left over for the other one. The people to drive, since we're going to have another full-time driver in a couple months. So
that's right.
That was the purpose behind it, is to have a vehicle ready. So, and before you ask, neither child is excited about this car. The indifference is staggering.
Yeah,
they're not our generation. They're like,
they do not care.
They're like, whatever.
And Sarah's actually outright said, "I don't want to drive the Charger." And I told her, I was like, "Well, sometimes you're going to have to because of just gas mileage. Like I have to drive further, so practicality puts me in the Camry.
Yeah.
So." Yeah.
And none of them want to drive my truck because it's a stick. So
that I kind of get.
But that's kind of you do that. You've done that as well. You're like, I don't really want to. Like when we had our old 51 Chevy, it's too big.
It was.
And then we got the little Volkswagen Bug, and it's got a stick and it's too hard to shift.
It's not an easy shift.
Yeah. I don't want to climb up in your big tall Jeep.
We all have our preferences. Congrats to you guys.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
And
that's a victory.
I got promoted last couple weeks here, and it's official.
Nice, congrats!
Started officially on the first, which was yesterday. So
perfect.
That's been some great news. God's blessing on us. It came several months early too, so it was a wonderful blessing. So
fantastic. That's how we
God continues to pour out those blessings as we stand, believe, take faithful action on His word. So, and that's what we're going to talk about, right? We're going to talk about Ruth taking faithful action and on the word, because she was not a Israelite. She was not a Hebrew. And she had to make a bold decision, a choice of her own. So we will get into that. But before we do that,
intro too.
Hit that intro and we'll get going.
We'll be right back.
Say what you will, that intro slaps.
It slaps. All right.
Happy
out of my mouth.
It does indeed slap.
Oh, crackers.
Oh my goodness.
So we're talking about Ruth tonight. So for those of you who don't know where Ruth is, it's in the Old Testament. And look in the old table of contents. You'll get past the
it's a chapter.
The
it's
first
on
few
page
books from
459 on my book.
Yeah, you find Joshua, then you find Judges, and you find out Joshua judges Ruth.
Yeah.
She
Okay.
They can edit that out if they want to, but you know.
All right.
dad joke. Bible dad joke. Oh my
So
So good.
I can take this if you want me to.
Roger
yeah, do
Yeah,
it.
go for it. You
We
got
know
all
you
the
read
notes.
this
Absolutely.
book. You've done some
Yeah,
great stuff on this.
I've got a lot of knowledge. Thankfully, because of work of others. Notable person in my life was I called her Grandma Jean. She wasn't my grandma, but beautiful woman of God. Love her so much, and she had a mastery of this book, and I heard her teach it a couple times. And I tell you what, I took notes directly in my Bible when she taught it.
Right.
So this Bible, I mean, it's not pretty, it's not neat, and I don't know if you can see it, but it's all over.
Yeah.
So it's all over the Book of Ruth. So I know that our format is more discussion rather than teaching, but
Do it.
I'll give kind of just an overview of the Book of Ruth.
Absolutely.
The Book of Ruth, it's 4 chapters long. So
easy read.
if you hear this, it's an easy read.
Right.
It's very narrative. So a family, husband and wife and their 2 sons, go to Moab. Israelites go to Moab to escape a famine. While they're there, the father dies. And the 2 sons then take wives of the Moabite women. And then they also die, the 2 sons. This leaves Naomi, the mother-in-law, and her 2 daughters-in-law in a very bad situation. Culturally, they could not stand on their own. It just wasn't their culture. And in modern day United States of America, I have a job. I own my own car. I can own my own property. I'm all right. I'm with you because I love you. Not because I need you per se.
I'm not a sugar
But I do need him. I do need him. But financially and culturally, Ruth and Naomi and Orpha, the other daughter-in-law, really, you needed a man. You needed either a father, a brother, a son, or hopefully a husband to take care of you. And they were without all of that. Neither of the 2 women had children during their marriages, and they were in a bad place. So Naomi chooses to go back to Israel, to the promised land, to her people. It'd been about 10 years that they spent in Moab. And as on the way back, she turns to her daughters-in-law and says, essentially, go ahead and go back to your land. You are young enough to remarry. You can find rest. And then that is a colloquialism or a figure of speech that really indicates you can find another husband. Mm-hmm. You could get married again, and you can find rest, that protection that a husband can provide. Orpha turns back, but Ruth stays with Naomi. And she says, and one of the most quoted, and even though we 4 just heard it because we were listening to a teaching, I'm going to quote it again because it's so good.
Yeah.
In chapter 1, verse 16, Ruth says to Naomi, after Naomi tells her to turn back, entreat me not to leave you or to turn back from following after you. For wherever you go, I will go, and wherever you lodge, I will lodge. Your people shall be my people, and your God, my God.
Hmm.
Where you die, I will die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death parts you and me.
Hmm.
So the two women go back.
Such a commitment.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
They go back. The famine has ended. It has been 10 years, and the famine has indeed ended. They go back at the beginning of the barley harvest. And there was a provision placed in the Old Testament. And let's see if I have the verse here. I don't have it off. It's in Deuteronomy. Oh, I think it's Deuteronomy 24:19. If you want to look it up, you can.
Check it out. Cool.
There's a provision in the Old Testament that forbids the reapers from picking up anything that they drop, and it also forbids them from gleaning the corners of the fields. And God says that whatever you drop in the corners of the fields are for the foreigner, the orphan, the fatherless, and the widower.
Yep.
So Ruth is both foreigner and widower,
and
essentially fatherless. Yeah, they don't have a man to protect them and to provide provision for them. So she gleans in Boaz's fields. Boaz is a wealthy man. You can tell from the narrative, but he notices he notices Ruth as she's gleaning, and he speaks to her and essentially says, "Stay here, stay in my field. I'm going to protect you. I've told the young men not to touch you. You can drink from the vessels whenever you need." And then he even commands them to go further and like drop even more for her to catch up, for her to gather. And so just really, favors Ruth. She brings it back. She brings the grain back to Naomi and says, who is this? It is Boaz. And she says, Boaz is a near kinsman. So that's important because there's another provision in the Word of God regarding provision for widows. And that is, should a husband die, his brother would marry the widow. If the husband dies and without leaving a son, the brother would marry the widow, and they would raise up a son in the name of the dead. So she is redeemed from poverty. I know that in the West we find it very maybe jarring, maybe a little bit like icky, even like. But again, different culture. It was really a way for God to protect the women. When the culture was against them,
Yeah. Your point too is they couldn't necessarily own their own property.
Yeah,
they couldn't necessarily hold their own office or businesses. I mean, there were those who were stuck out of that crowd, but for all intents and purposes, there was limited options for a woman.
100%,
especially in Naomi's situation, Ruth's situation, Orpha's. So you have to take that into consideration and the scope of the time too. So
go ahead. You want to say?
Well, I was just going to say, I thought it was cool how, she obviously was walking with God. She went to his field of all fields to go to, and didn't know who he was until she came back. And Naomi's like, "Oh, that's blah blah blah," it was just, she was in the right place at the right time and was kind to him. He was kind to her. And she was respectful of his field and did what she needed to do and waited for that authorization from him. And then to go back and find out, oh, this is our guy,
Yeah, and don't toss out the fact that from her perspective is of being a Moabite, right? They had many gods and different things in here. She, unlike the Orpha, chose Naomi's God basically over all these many gods that she had available to her in the way she was raised. And here she's doing that, and then now seeing favor.
Oh, Ruth.
Ruth. And Ruth's upbringing, and obviously the influences of being around Ruth. So that's pretty neat to mention in there as well. That the other girl went back home to many gods
because she was looking at her family as her safety, and
Yep.
Ruth was looking at God as her safety.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Yeah.
So okay. So he takes care of her. He provides provision for her while she's reaping. She brings it back to Naomi. Naomi says at the top of chapter 3, then Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, shall I not seek security for you, that it may be well with you?" And security is a husband. I want to seek a husband for you. Now Boaz, whose young women you were with, is he not our relative? In fact, he is winnowing barley tonight at the threshing floor. Therefore, wash yourself and anoint yourself, put on your best garment, and go down to the threshing floor. But do not make yourself known to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. Then it shall be, when he lies down, you'll notice the place where he lies, and ye shall go in, uncover his feet, and lie down, and he will tell you what you should do. So there's people like to, in their minds, jump to
make this maybe more sultry than it
yeah,
actually is.
it wasn't sultry at all. So he laid down, and let's say my fingers are his feet. She laid down this way, so she's laying like they're making a T shape
at the foot of where he was laying.
So it was very appropriate. There wasn't anything
she wasn't trying to say
illicit going on.
It doesn't say that she laid with him or to insinuate that they were having physical relationships in that moment. So
with some respect is what I kind of see. It wasn't
very respectful, 100%.
Yeah.
And he actually, in the narrative of that section, he calls her my daughter. He speaks respectfully to her.
Mm-hmm.
He tells her that all the people of the town know that she's a virtuous woman. So it's a very respectful dialogue that they have. And ultimately in the dialogue, she says, take your maidservant, referring to herself, under your wing, for you are a close relative. That is a formal marriage proposal. She's and again, in the West, it's love and marriage, right? Love and marriage. Which I'm happy for. I'm very thankful that I live in the West in the time that I do, and I love my husband with a romantic love. But again, at the time in the culture, it was much more like business-like, if you will, and she's truly asking him to be a provision and a protector for her for the rest of her life.
Right.
He is also, let's see, take under your wing. He says, and now, my daughter, do not fear. I will do all for you, all that you request, for all the people of the town know that you are a virtuous woman. Now it is true that I am a close relative. So why is it important that he's a close relative? Why can't anybody else do this? And it goes back to the provision of the brother. So there wasn't a brother. The other brother died, if you remember.
Mm-hmm.
So he is the next closest relative, or actually he's going to say he's actually not the next closest. He has to check in with the guy who is the next closest. But that is that provision. Go ahead, babe.
I just wanted to interject here that concept of virtuous woman, and like we said, this wasn't an illicit interaction between them when she laid at his feet. And that word virtuous, in Proverbs 31, it talks about the virtuous woman. The chapter goes at length to describe what she is. And that word virtuous, I have it underlined, and it says strong in integrity or valiant. So, and the fact that he calls her a virtuous woman, because in Proverbs 31 verse 10 it says, "Who can find a virtuous or a strong in integrity woman? For her price is far above rubies."
Mm-hmm.
So he sees the value in this woman and in that integrity.
Mm-hmm.
So that should dispel any suggestion that she was doing anything that was illicit. Yeah, in that moment, and that he knew she was a good woman. So even if it was she was coming at it from a contractual idea of like, I need a husband, you'd be a great husband. He understands that not only is she'd be a great wife, he found favor in her, but she's a great woman and she would be a great addition to his life. So something to bear that in mind too.
Not to mention he'd be taking on the responsibility of Naomi until she passes.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's a big pill for him to swallow. And I think Naomi's encouraging of her to pursue this was for her benefit as well. They both needed the Redeemer. So he wasn't just the Redeemer for Ruth, but also for Naomi.
Yeah, 100%.
And what's pretty neat lesson that we're learning here too, as you were talking about Western culture, for on the male side of this, having a virtuous woman that you're attracted to and looking as a partner in a relationship, as someone who's had, unfortunately a couple not go well, but when I finally got my act together and started looking at the qualities of a person versus just the physical, sure, and things like that, the things that made the most sense
I'm lacking in physicals.
No, that were the most important, that all the things that you brought to the table outside of your appearance were the things that I even to this day find the most valuable in our relationship, is your smarts, your hard work ethic, your ethical, your faith.
It's what a mature, God-fearing man should be seeking.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, 100%. So, and we do have an indication that Boaz was a mature man in that he calls her my daughter. That does indicate that he's likely, she's probably in her mid-20s by now. And this might indicate maybe he's like late 30s, 40s.
So
maybe
way old
50.
for that time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like wild for us in our culture, but it's but now that I am over 40, I realize it's not that old. So there you go. Anyway,
his wealth would have also indicated that he's been around a minute.
True.
He wasn't. It doesn't indicate that he was born into wealth because he was a landowner. So I mean, he must have acquired that, and he made it through the famine, which lasted. Must have. Again, they didn't just walk in and suddenly he was a prince or something like that. He was a landowner. He worked. He got his hands dirty. And I'm sure you're about to share how you can share his interaction with his workers too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, those are great. I can do that.
Says, bless you guys. God may our God bless you. You can pull it up. So I'm
his introduction into Ruth is
first words in this record.
That you can see who he is.
In chapter 2, verse 4, Boaz, and this is the first words recorded that he speaks, says, Boaz came to see the reapers. He came to visit the harvest.
He's in his field,
and he says, "The Lord be with you." And they, the reapers, answered him, "The Lord bless you." So the Lord be with you is the first thing that he says to them. And you know what? I may have a note in here. I have a feeling that that's what his name means. No. I do have a note in here, but in the Lord is strength is what Boaz means. In the Lord is strength.
The teaching that we had heard on Ruth, it gave perspective in that this time in the book of Judges, gives a reference that every man was kind of doing his own thing. There was it was like in a time when every man was kind of going his own way and was
there was no ruler.
Doing good in his own eyes. Yeah. This man kept the word as his focal point. He had the integrity for the word. So truly an honorable man in life, period. But also in the scope of times, we, you think about some other records in the word where, like, you had one man standing among the rest of the world who, Noah, Abraham, or Abram,
or like a cluster of people, like
a handful, like even Lot was like one of the last people out of Sodom and Gomorrah.
Yeah, him and his 2 daughters. His wife made it out, but then she looked back and it was no good for her.
So it's like, but
salty.
he was Boaz was a believer
and a man of integrity.
Yeah, when a lot of people were just kind of doing their own thing, they were going, following their own wind, if you will,
Yeah, and we're talking about, this is where the Israelites are come out of the forest, right? This is the place.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're in the promised land.
They're
in the promised land, and here in the promised land is famine going on because of these people doing their own things in their own eyes.
Yeah.
And here's Boaz, who clearly, based on this information we're getting, his integrity with still believing in God, and God is providing.
Yeah,
where he still has the
and again, remember that the famine had ended by that point.
Right. Yeah.
The word that said that the famine had ended.
Yeah.
But
But he had lived through that.
Yeah.
At some point,
Didn't lose anything
and stayed successful.
Yeah.
So yes, 100%.
So anyway.
All right. So he says, verse 12, chapter 3. Now it is true that I am a close relative. However, there is a relative closer than I. So legally, he had to go to this closer relative and say, hey, you can buy back the land. This wasn't just marriage. It was buying back of the land of Elimelech. Yeah, Elimelech.
Mm-hmm.
The patriarch who had died in Moab.
Yeah, Naomi's husband.
Yep. So he says, he says, I'm going to go talk to him. And he does. Chapter 4, verse 1. Now Boaz went up to the gate and sat down there, and behold, the close relative of whom Boaz had spoken came by. Convenient. So Boaz said, and that would have been a place where people would have been meeting and greeting. Like, that's just where people kind of like congregated anyway. So maybe it wasn't that random, but maybe it was. Maybe God was just like, here he is, so you can get this over and done with and get on with it. But come aside, friend, sit down here. So he came aside and sat down. And he took 10 men of the elders of the city. So these are legal witnesses now. So this is becoming a legal transaction. And said, sit down here. So they sat down. Then he said to the close relative, Naomi, who has come back from the country of Moab, sold the piece of land which belonged to our brother Elimelech. Can you look up Leviticus 25:23. I have a note there. I'm not 100% sure what it is, but I have a feeling it has to do with the year of Jubilee.
What I think is cool here too is that he didn't say to her, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not the next of kin. You need to go check with this guy and send her to go do it.
Yeah.
He was a gentleman. He took control of the situation. He's like, let's do this. That's cool, because a lot of, I don't know, guys today would have been like, sorry, not my problem. Go figure it out.
Well, and I do, even though the word never says love or directly indicates romantic love between the two. Ruth's name means beauty. And he notices her while she's gleaning in the field, and he says, whose damsel is this? She's probably not the only gleaner.
Right.
But he takes, so I think that you can make a strong argument that there is an attraction there.
She wasn't a sea donkey
so
or anything like that.
No, she was likely very beautiful. And again, she was young. She's in her, again, likely mid-20s, 23, 24.
Got it going on.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, my girl's got it going on. And she's walked all this way from Moab, like she's gleaning in the field. So she is not a stranger to like some physical activity and hard work. So
she's probably sturdy.
She got like the like muscle structure, whatever. Okay. Anyway, I'm gonna get back on back on topic.
Moving off topic, yeah.
Oh, for real.
I have Leviticus 25-23 pulled up if you want.
Yeah, go ahead and Leviticus 25-23 through 28.
Okay, so it says, the land shall not be sold forever, for the land is mine, for ye are strangers and sojourners with me. And in all the land your possession, ye shall grant a redemption for the land. If thy brother be waxen poor and hath sold away some of his possession, and if his kin come to redeem it, then shall he redeem that which is his brother's soul. Mm-hmm. And if the man shall have none to redeem it, and himself be able to redeem it, then let him count the years of the sale thereof, and restore the overplus unto the man to whom he sold it, that he may return unto his possession. But if he be not able to restore it to him, then that which is sold shall remain in the hand of him that hath bought it until the year of Jubilee. And in the Jubilee it shall go out, and he shall return unto his possession.
Yeah. So God, again, we have such a loving God, and God provided, again, this provision, this protection for the people of Israel, that when something did happen to them, a financial burden came upon them, that they had to sell their own land. God promised it wouldn't be sold forever. He says, the land is mine. The land is it's mine anyway.
Right.
And he made this provision within the law. This is law, that it could be bought back by a kinsman redeemer. Mm-hmm. We are bought back by our kinsman redeemer. So that's ultimately the whole point of this.
Well,
and I'm going to go on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to get there, but
we tie it in.
There is a huge tie-in here. So, okay. So he offers to the closer relative to buy back the land. And initially the closer relative says, yes, like, yeah, I want some land. Who doesn't? But he says, but you also must buy it from the hand of Naomi and Ruth the Moabitess. And then the close relative said, I cannot redeem it for myself, lest I ruin my own inheritance.
Yep.
He did not want a Moabite woman. So there was obviously, like, the Moabites, excuse me, I have the hiccups. The Moabites had, they were often enemies of God, like aggressors to the children of Israel. There was a lot of negative connotation that went along with that.
Right.
Even though this woman, Ruth, was known throughout the city as a virtuous woman, and it was known how she had come back with Naomi and all that she's doing for Naomi, but he still didn't want that.
Stigma. Yeah,
he wasn't
stigma on him.
Yeah.
So, and then he says, "You redeem my right of redemption for yourself, for I cannot redeem it." Now, this was the custom in former times in Israel concerning redeeming and exchanging to confirm anything. One man took off his sandal and gave it to the other, and this was a confirmation in Israel. So it's just like when we bought the car the other day. We bought it off a private owner, and he took the title out, and he signed his name. Yeah, and we gave him a shoe. But it was a legally binding contract. So we signed it. So now we are the new owners. So in this giving of the shoe, it was a legally binding contract, and it was done in front of the 10 elders of the city. Yeah. So there were witnesses also. Excuse me, my throat's getting dry, but I only got a little bit more to go, so I got this. He says, Ruth the Moabitess, the widow of Mahlon, I have acquired as my wife to perpetuate the name of the dead through his inheritance, that the name of the dead may not be cut off from among his brethren, and from his position at the gate, you are witnesses this day. So, Boaz indeed,
responsibility.
he indeed accepted the responsibility to be husband to Ruth, to care for her, to take care of Naomi, his mother-in-law, and they had a son, and that son was Obed, who is father to Jesse, who was father to King David, and who was of the lineage of Jesus Christ. So now, we live in a fallen world.
Indeed.
Adam once had ownership, but he gave it up when he sinned. And that ownership, not of the physical world, that is still God's. God says the land is mine. But the systems of the world are the adversaries now. It has been sold, but it has been bought back, and one day it will be fully what's the word? Redeemed.
Yeah.
And a kinsman redeemer had to be a close kinsman. Jesus Christ is our close kinsman because he was a man. He was fully a man. He was the Son of God, but human in all ways. He partook in the flesh of the blood just like we did. He was able to pay the price. So there's a price to be paid in redemption. There was some cost. There would have had to have been an exchange for even Boaz. Jesus Christ was willing to pay the price. The price that he had to pay was crucifixion and death. But he was willing to pay the price also. He was willing to pay the price. Yeah.
He was willing to take on the responsibility, just like
So
willing and able.
You guys talk amongst yourself. I'm going to run over to Revelation and tell you the end of the story.
And easily could have done like the other kinsman and said, I don't, knowing that there's this other,
the stigma,
of this Moabite, right, or theoretically Gentile.
Right.
He could have said, I'm only here to redeem
Israel,
which is what everybody thought was the case, right? And that's not the case. God's plan was that all would be redeemed.
And there's hints of that in that record in Ruth.
Because the fact that Ruth is a Moabite, so therefore she is a Gentile, and therefore in the lineage of Jesus Christ, not only is he from Israel, but he's also had Gentile genes in him.
More than one, because
Rahab
was in his
bloodline. Amazing, right? Yeah.
So
so cool.
And just showing God's grace, right?
Yeah.
I mean, God doesn't want to exclude anybody. I think that's a human thing. That's a human stigma that people put on it, and that's the private interpretation. I mean, we're talking Old Testament. We're not talking Christianity. This is still Hebrew times, and they're going by Hebrew laws. And the fact that the whole gleaning thing was Levitical law. So God, think about that. We think about, if you read about some of the gods of the world around, like the Moabites and the gods that they worship, they had to sacrifice people, they had to sacrifice babies and all kinds of crazy stuff to appease their gods. Our God wrote in his law for his people, if some of the extra grains left behind, leave it for the poor, leave it for the fatherless, leave it for the hungry, for those who are at least give something to them, and not just, you don't come back and like kick them and take it out of their hands kind of thing.
Right.
It's like built-in grace to teach his people how to be kind, loving, and thankful. Because if our God is saying do that for each other, then why wouldn't we want to just be praising him for that, amazing grace that he's bestowed upon us? Just a wonderful example of that. in His Word from way back, even in the Old Testament.
Yeah, and when Christ talks, when Christ would give sermon and would be teaching, here he is teaching those same exact values and same exact things, which is, do unto others as you want done unto you.
Yeah.
And it's all based on doing the will of God, the Father.
Yeah.
He wasn't changing anything that God hadn't been already talking about previously in the Old Testament. As you just said, it was such a great example in just a small thing that those who believed and lived godly, that was it wasn't like, oh, I got to leave this for the people. It was like, well, this is what we do.
We have such abundance that we can afford to leave.
Yeah.
If we miss something, we can afford to leave it there for those who are less fortunate.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And go ahead, Beth. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say real quick. One of the thoughts I had too was about how that other potential kinsman didn't want to mar his. How did it state it? He didn't want to jeopardize his other
his birthright, his inheritance.
Yeah, his inheritance. So because of what he may have heard about another class of people, and like we deal with that these days as well. There's certain classes of people, like all these issues that we have about hate and racism, and classifying people.
It's all division.
Not everybody in a certain race acts a certain way, and you just have to walk in love with those people. And I don't know. I didn't really see it being an issue back then as far as the racism goes, but apparently, that's how that
there was still division on, there were tribes killing tribes and people killing
people.
A
lot of that was still, the whole law of the Old Testament and was in order to keep man in a redeemable state.
Yeah.
And the things that God told his people to separate themselves out from was things that were so inhumane. A lot of it was just, again, false. It was idol worship, but there's a spiritual aspect of it. But there was a lot that was just straight up just evil, inhumanity to inhumane to one another, the way they treated their livestock. I mean, God put those provisions in His Word so that mankind would have a standard by which to treat animals, to treat humans, to and to treat situations and what to do, and have punishment for those who disobeyed, because clearly, as Laura stated, they were in a fallen state. It's just when the world is in a fallen state and has been from then till now. So there is evil out there. So in order to keep mankind in a redeemable state, in order for Christ to come, because Christ fulfilled the law. He fulfilled the law and reduced it down to love thy neighbor as thyself, and love God.
God first.
Yeah. Love God and love thy neighbor as thyself. So, but until then, that law was what kept mankind in that redeemable state so Christ could come, because there was much evil in those nations outside of Israel. And even it copped out for a while too. So not to get off topic here.
No, what'd you find, Laura?
Okay. Revelation 5, verse or chapter 1. I'm sorry.
Wait, what?
It's late for me, guys. Dear viewers of the Word with Friends podcast, that's 5 at a time. Revelation 5:1. And I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll written inside and on the back, sealed with 7 seals. This throws back to when property was sold. The contract essentially was sealed with 7 seals. And then when the 7 seals were opened, the land was redeemed. So that's the Old Testament tie-in. Then I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, "Who is worthy to open the scroll and loose its seals?" And no one in heaven or on the earth or under the earth was able to open the scroll or to look at it. So I wept much because no one was found worthy to open and read the scroll or to look at it. But one of the elders said to me, "Do not weep. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, has prevailed to open the scroll and loose its 7 seals." So indeed, when Jesus Christ opens the scroll, and this is still a future event, he has paid the price. He has the contract. He just hasn't opened the scrolls yet. Some other stuff has got to happen first. But the earth will not always be in the hands of the adversary.
Yeah.
It's going to come back to the Lord Jesus Christ and the rightful owner, us, and he is our kinsman redeemer. So it's just, God, I love the Book of Ruth, because on the surface, it's just this, like, it's a nice narrative. It's a great story.
Yeah.
It is a gorgeous story there, but there's so much depth to it that it just,
we could spend another couple hours.
And you know what? I want to retract what I just said. It's that it's a gorgeous story. I'd like to retract and say it's a gorgeous truth, because it happened.
It is.
Yeah.
It was.
It's a history.
It's a
like
history.
A great history.
Yeah.
I think that's something that as a Christian, I have to start reminding myself that as I talk about the Word of God, I don't fall into the traps of talking about stories. These are written accounts that happened.
This
the Word of God is a book of truth.
Yeah. Esther falls into that category. If you look at it on the surface, it's a great history. It's an amazing story. But there's another one you could really dig into and just get beneath the surface of that one. And there's so much in that one, the word, like, God's not even mentioned.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
It's an interesting other
future podcast.
Yeah, maybe.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
It's several in that area after Judges, before Psalms and Proverbs, several of the books in there, and then some of the prophets after Proverbs and Lamentations. So they have similar styles where you're reading it from a narrative perspective, but you see God working and woven into all of those. And they lived through some very interesting times. So again,
sorry, go ahead, Brian.
I was just saying, we've been working on becoming better workmen of the Word. It's really great to dig into these narratives. So go ahead, John.
So you ladies, as you read Ruth, what are some of the things that you've gleaned from, each of you? I'd love to hear both of your perspectives on what you've gleaned from Ruth, being that here's this wonderful truth about a woman in the Bible where it's a book specifically about her. So I'd love to hear your perspectives.
Go ahead, Laura.
So, and Ruth was just wonderful. Naomi, what kind of woman was she that Ruth chose to cling to her rather than go back to her own family, to go somewhere she's never been? She probably knows she's not going to be overly well received being a foreigner. And I think about a lot of stuff. She's like, you want to be here for another hour or more? I think about how God took care of her. But I also think about how the adversary, who still runs the systems of the world, and what does he do? But he lies and he steals. What does he steal, kill, and destroy? That's what it says in John. And one of the things I believe that he's stolen from women is our own power and our femininity, and our love and appreciation for our men. We live in a society of smash the patriarchy and I don't need a man and that kind of stuff. And again, financially, no, I would be all right by myself, kind of. I mean, I don't know this economy. I kind of, but
you would make it happen.
I would be all right
financially dependent. You're not a housewife or anything like that.
But God designed man and women to be together. And in the book of Genesis, he specifically says it is not good for man to be alone. Now, he was talking about the man at that point, and then that's why he made Eve. But I do believe that goes both ways. And actually, I think you're finding more and more like studies coming out about like the happiness levels of women who are married with children versus women who have chosen the career path instead and, said, no, I don't want, and then they come to, their 40s and they're like, oh, oops.
Yeah.
And I've seen like, TikTok videos and stuff of girls, that women who have straight up said, I've been sold a lie. I believed a lie.
Mm-hmm.
That everything I needed was in my career. I could be but I want to be a wife and I want to be a mother. And in the New Testament, it says that a woman is made whole by childbearing, or like child rearing is what like the context really indicates.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a time in my life when, before Sarah was born, earlier in our marriage, we were kind of like, I don't know if I want kids. We were enjoying being alone.
A couple.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But man, I wouldn't change where I am right now for not anything. Yeah. Literally anything.
I feel like if we were this age and didn't have children, we would be regretful. That regret would settle in pretty heavily. Yes. And it's one of those irreversible decisions that you make. I mean, you can adopt, yes, but it's maybe not the same, but or just having children, even if you can, if you can't have your own children, adopt or something like that, just to have that fulfilling. It's fulfilling. Is it challenging? Absolutely. But,
I love that in the Book of Ruth, it actually says that Naomi became nurse to Obed, her grandson. Yeah. So she got that wonderful being able to be a grandmother, she got that wonderful relationship too. So, I just think that I find it sad and just I see it as a work of the adversary, how feminism, which started out very appropriately, I think, I should be paid equally. Sure. If I'm doing equal work, I should have the right to vote. I'm, but where it has gone to a place of, and I don't want to get completely off topic, but it is morphed into something that actually harms women.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right, Beth, your turn.
Well, I would like to just say I would still be wandering around looking for my car in a parking lot if it wasn't for this man.
No.
I am a very strong-willed person. Being a single mom for as long as I was with 3 kids, I was the decider of everything. I was the one handling everything and control of everything. And it was very hard for me to let go when I met a man of God who was now the head of our family. And there's still times that's a big challenge for me to let go and let him do his job and be responsible. This is what he wants to be responsible. And I love the fact that, we see how strong she was. We see how faithful she was. I love, again, and I shared this earlier with our group when we had fellowship, but I loved the relationship, looking at the relationship that she had with Naomi, and like how you said, she chose to stay with her, even though she was entering into a place where she may not be well received. She was entering in a place that she had never been. She was trusting this woman in her guidance. Really, it was all of them, because they had all gone. So really, Elimelech, it would have been his direction to go to this place initially, and then then obviously all the men were lost. But just the strength and the attachment that she had to her mother-in-law. I shared earlier, I had that same attachment with John's mom. She wasn't a mother-in-law to me. She was my mom. And she, we just had a completely different relationship than I did with my own mother. I respected her advice. I went to her for advice. And this was not necessarily word advice or godly advice. It was just good advice. It was just sound advice because she was just a good person. So, to see that and to know what that feels like, it's just amazing for me to watch Ruth. And she was just such a great example. And I'm so thankful for the book. And I'm thankful that I do wake up in the morning and see myself in certain areas as a virtuous woman. I'm beginning to see that more and more. There was a time when I was like, what? Not me, talking about me. But I do see strengths, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud that I've put the work and the time into my walk with God to see that reflection when I look in the mirror now. And a lot of it has to do with the way my husband looks at me and the things he says to me and the things he notices about me. And I loved how, Boaz said that to her, and called her out on the fact that she was this virtuous woman as well. So I think there's something to be said there too. The male and female marriage relationship is a great thing. And there's so much challenge with it in the world today. And it doesn't need to be a challenge.
Right.
And I think the more people, we talked about the word being the standard in a marriage relationship. And if that standard's here, then if I'm wrong, I'm subject to that. I'm not subject to this. And, same for him. And when you have that, you just can't go wrong. You always have that to come back to. So super thankful. This was a great topic to talk about tonight. I'm so happy we did it. I'm so happy that you all chose to share the teaching that you did at our fellowship tonight. And
definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Brian, what are some of the, from the male perspective that you take from Ruth?
Well, I mean, Laura shared something in the word that God said it's not good that man should be alone. And he made a wife because God knew that if man was left alone, he would end up with black and knee-high socks and sandals. I mean, and so,
pizza in the fridge.
Exactly. Cheez-Its and Mountain Dew for dinner every night.
That's right.
Dios mío.
Ramen's nutritious.
No, again, one of the things that I find so amazing is that it's, I think Beth, you said it, that Ruth chose. She had free will choice, just like Orpha did. Orpha had free will choice to go back to Moab and her people and her gods. Ruth chose by her free will to walk with Naomi and to walk with the Hebrew God. Knowing full well she would be walking into a place that she could very well be ostracized and very have that racism or nationalism against her and stuff like that. But God protected her. God took care of her. They walked in, the famine had ended, and they walked in during the Passover. So it was the barley harvest. They had walked in during the Passover, and it's another point that was made in that relationship to foreshadowing of Christ coming as the perfect Passover. He's known as the perfect Passover lamb. So so much foreshadowing there. And it really, I see a lot of the grace that God put down for his people. And and this woman who was did not have financial value at that point. She had no land, she had no husband or anything. I mean, what was she bringing? But she found favor in the sight of Boaz, and she was able to bear a child that was in the Christ line. That Jesus Christ can track his lineage back to and beyond Ruth, but she is in the Christ lineage in Matthew, which is just what a nod to Ruth being faithful, that she gets to be not only did her tale get told in her own book, but she's marked as being in that Christ line. What an honor that must be.
Well, and wasn't it too that mostly only men were listed in the genealogy, but there was Ruth and
four women.
Okay,
three or four. It's Tamar, Ruth, Rahab,
and Mary.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Out of all the generations. So
and I love that. Boaz was such a great example of a great man, not only just a great man of God, but a great employer. Mm-hmm. He had servants, but he took care of them. And clearly he spoke the word to them because they spoke the word back. They praised each other. And, it's a great working environment. They had hard work. It's not like they were sitting in an office in air conditioning. They were out there laboring, and he clearly walked among his people. Like, he went out to the reapers. That he didn't come visit them in the cafeteria that's air conditioned, and just walking around saying hi and stuff like that. He met them in the fields. Mm-hmm. Again, an honorable man, and was among his people. He was not some king. He worked for a living. He was a blue collar guy.
He was out on the threshing floor when Ruth went to go speak to him, indicating that he was threshing. He was working.
He's putting the work in.
Yeah.
What a great perspective of being in management, basically, and you're out there with your people. That's cool.
I mean, that's something that's I find very valuable from a five senses perspective. There's a lot spiritually there that he's very strong. He just but from a five senses as a man, we look for what are those role models for men, because just like Laura said, Ruth is a great example of a role model for a woman. But what about the role model for young men or for men who are reading the word? There's so many good ones, but Boaz stands out. He's a great human being, great man.
Oh, cool.
And a great husband. So, Hubs.
What do you got, John?
Well, you spoke of great examples that, as males, that is something that we, at least, I feel that's something that we definitely have in common is, I've had some great mentors in my life and continue to glean from men who have value and that you can take from. I'm looking at this story, not only of the story of Ruth, but, Elimelech, who takes his sons and obviously his virtuous wife, Naomi, and sees that the area that they're in is not doing right by God, right? And it doesn't say that they specifically left and then they went and did their own deal and walked away from God, right? It doesn't say that. I'm going to say that they probably continued to teach their sons. They continued to teach, obviously, these new women that came into their son's life about God, and at least gave, and if they weren't teaching about God, living biblically, that these people saw that in them, because these relationships, even though Orpha leaves, she still has enough respect to kiss Naomi and say, I'm leaving to go back to my family, following direction that she was given. Sure. So there's the respect of that. And of course, didn't leave and go, oh, forget you, I'm out of here, I don't got nothing more here. She kisses her, which again is, I think, shows a sign of respect, or definitely this virtuous woman in Naomi, right? That now Ruth is gleaning from, that you guys are talking about. And it's just such a great example. If we're picking through, this is how awesome and amazing the onion of God's word is if you really pay attention, there are little indications without God saying specifically, but here's the digging into the word, that if you pay attention, like we've read this multiple times, I never took into account about Elimelech that he had to make, he chose a wonderful woman to be his wife, had sons with her, that found these women that also gleaned from his wife, enough where Ruth's life completely changes and becomes the lineage of Christ.
Yeah,
it's pretty amazing. So for me as a male, it's just, again, just for just seeing you both women, I love and definitely admire, and that you both have such young women can glean from your examples as far as being women of God, And as your husband and as your partners, I'm sure for us, Brian and I, it just makes us want to be better men for you, to for you to trust in our leadership the way God intends it, but not, again, as Boaz did. He wasn't this tyrant of a reigning person. He was a man, like you said, Brian, respectful, and even to his workers, obviously spoke the word of God to them.
He was very kind.
Yes.
That they would also say back to him these wonderful words of God. It's so cool. So what an amazing truth in Ruth. Such a great book.
Yeah.
So if you haven't read through it, read through it.
Yeah. 4 chapters. Easy peasy.
Pick up on what we shared.
Really
and
pay
if you have
attention
any
to
questions or need more information, let us know.
Yeah, so good.
So
absolutely.
Fun.
Hey, what a great topic tonight, huh?
Yes.
That was super fun.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Fantastic teaching, Laura.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you
for sharing.
You know this chapter inside and out. So.
And a nice little bit of a change of our structure. We have a little bit of teaching. We had a little intro, a little teaching, and then some discourse afterwards. I think that we're willing to give that a try in the future. See if that's something that viewers like. If you like this style, obviously leave a comment at the bottom, thumbs up, like and subscribe, and
for sure.
Leave us some feedback if you like this.
There we go.
There you go. Yeah,
I knew it was there somewhere.
Yeah. So I mean, I think that really great session tonight. So thanks everybody for watching. Again, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button and leave comments. This is you've been listening to and watching the Word with Friends podcast. I'm Brian.
I'm Laura.
I'm Beth.
I'm John.
All right.
God
bless you. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.